I never thought a grown man could make me feel like I was 17. Again, standing in a hallway with a failing grade in my hand. But that's exactly what my boss did to me, day after day, until the morning everything snapped. And if you're wondering why I'm telling this, it's because I need to get it out of my chest. I need someone to hear it the way no one at that company ever listened to me. It started with one sentence. Evan, you're just a high school graduate. Don't act like you're here to impress anyone. The way he said it, low voice, tight smile, told me everything. I wasn't a colleague. I wasn't even an employee. I was a reminder of everything Mr. Callahan thought he'd risen above. Being broke, being young, being unpolished, being the kid who didn't have a framed diploma behind his desk. He said it in front of 5 other people during my first month at the firm, not because it mattered, but because it amused him, and I swallowed it. Like I swallowed the jokes, the reminders, the condescending buddy and sport he dropped into every conversation. I told myself it would get better once he saw how hard I worked. Once he saw I wasn't some kid who lucked into a job he didn't deserve. I was always the first one in, lights still cold, office air sharp like metal, and the last one out, shuffling paperwork, long after Callahan's polished shoes disappeared down the hallway. But effort doesn't protect you from humiliation. The man had a talent for it. Let Evan handle it. He doesn't have to understand it. Don't ask him about market structure. He's still learning what college is. Maybe next time you take a business course, champ. I laughed with everyone else. Because if I didn't, it felt like I'd break something inside me. Still, I pushed. I learned. I read entire textbooks at home because I didn't have a class to teach me. I practiced cold calls in my mirror until my voice didn't shake. I spent weekends building spreadsheets no one asked for just so I could prove I was more than the joke he treated me as. But every time I got close to showing that I mattered, Callahan stepped in, took credit, rewrote the story. Once, after I spent 12 hours preparing a pitch deck, he looked at it, nodded, walked into the meeting, presented the entire thing as his own work, and on the way out said, "Best thing you can learn from me, Evan. Don't overestimate your role." I didn't say anything. I never did. I was 20, he was 41, with an Ivy League degree and a reputation built before I was old enough to buy a beer. I told myself that this was the cost of entry. He'd break me down now so I'd be stronger later. Then came the day I realized he wasn't preparing me for anything. He just enjoyed the breaking. It was a Wednesday morning, early spring, cold rain sticking to the windows. I was sorting through transfer reports when I overheard 2 partners whispering near the conference room. Something about a private foreign fund, something about confidentiality, something about an acquisition I'd only seen mentioned in industry chatter. A chance, a real one. And without thinking, without knowing why, maybe instinct, maybe desperation, I wrote down the name of the fund. That was all. Just a small note in my planner. The entire day, my stomach felt like it was full of static. At lunch, Callahan tossed a file onto my desk. "Busy work," he said. "Should keep you from pretending you're ready for real assignments." Something tightened in my throat. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter, heavier, a tiredness that felt like truth settling in. That night, I went home, sat at my tiny kitchen table under the buzzing light bulb, and looked up the name of that fund. And for the first time since I'd started at the firm, I let myself imagine the possibility that I was capable of more than being someone's punchline. I spent an hour crafting a single email. Short, respectful, sincere. No corporate lingo, no pretentious vocabulary, just me, my name, my role, my intention to learn more about their needs. Then I hit send. I didn't tell anyone, not even my roommate. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my inbox had one new message. "Evan, thank you for reaching out. We'd be open to a short introductory call, informal, off record." I stared at the screen until the words blurred, not from shock, from something I hadn't felt in months. Validation, not applause, not approval. just the quiet confirmation that I wasn't crazy for believing I had something to offer. I went to the office earlier than usual, and sat through the morning like I was holding a live wire no one else could see. My hands wouldn't stay still. I kept imagining the sound of Callahan's voice if he ever found out. But the call wasn't until evening, after hours, after he was gone. When 6:15 hit and the last person left the floor, I sat in a silent conference room with nothing but my cheap laptop and my heartbeat punching through my shirt. And I did it. I spoke clearly. I answered questions. I didn't pretend to be someone else. At the end, the representative said something I'll never forget. "You sound more grounded than most people with degrees. Let's continue this conversation." A small sentence, but it cracked something open in me. A small victory, but the first one that felt real. And yet, but that was just the beginning. If part one was the spark, part two was the oxygen. Because the moment the fund replied to me, everything else in my life seemed to press harder, like the world wanted to see if I'd crack before anything real could grow. The morning after that first call, I walked into the office with a different kind of energy. Not confidence exactly, more like the awareness that I wasn't trapped the way Callahan wanted me to believe. It felt fragile, like something I had to protect. And maybe that's why it hurt more than usual when he went after me. He was already in the office when I arrived, leaning over a partner's desk, laughing too loud. The kind of laugh meant for an audience, not amusement. When he saw me, his smile sharpened. "Well, well, if it isn't the night shift janitor," he straightened his tie. "Tell me, Evan, did you alphabetize the filing cabinet like I asked? Or was that too advanced for someone with a high school diploma?" A couple of analysts chuckled. Not because it was funny, but because they'd learned it was safer. I told myself to let it go. I had something bigger happening, something he knew nothing about. But he wasn't done. "You know," he continued, "initiative is great, but don't overdo it. Last thing we need is you pretending you're management material. Leave the real work to the adults." I felt heat rise to my face. A week ago I might have apologized, or forced a smile. But now I had one sentence in the back of my mind like a lifeline. "You sound more grounded than most people with degrees." He had no idea someone had said that to me, and the fact that he didn't know, that he couldn't imagine anyone valuing me, made something shift inside me. Still, I nodded, grabbed a stack of reports, and kept my mouth shut. Not because he deserved silence, but because I wasn't going to waste my breath on someone who couldn't imagine I had any worth. Around noon, Callahan called me into his office. He didn't look up as I walked in. "Close the door." He signed something dramatically, then tossed a binder across his desk toward me. "Take care of these revisions, and don't screw it up. They'll have to go through me anyway. I'm just letting you play with the training wheels." "Understood," I said. He finally looked at me then, eyes sharp, amused, like he was waiting for me to flinch. When I didn't, he frowned. "You look energetic today," he said slowly. "Did someone give you a gold star?" "No," I answered. "Just slept well." That wasn't true, but the way his jaw tightened told me he didn't like not understanding something. He didn't like losing control of the story. That day dragged. I kept thinking about the fund's next steps. They'd asked for a follow-up call, more details, specifically asked for me, but I didn't know if going forward was insane. It wasn't technically forbidden for a junior analyst to speak with potential clients. Just unusual. Very unusual. And Callahan? If he found out, well, I guessed correctly, because he did. It happened 2 days later. I'd just finished a second call with the fund. Informal again, short but promising. And I walked back into the office to find Callahan leaning against my desk, scrolling through something on his phone. When he saw me, he lifted one eyebrow. "Come with me." He didn't wait for my response. We stepped into a small meeting room. He shut the door behind us, hard. "What?" he said, voice low but vibrating. "Do you think you're doing?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" His jaw clenched. "Don't play dumb. I know about the calls. A cold shock went through me. How? Because, he snapped, I monitor activity involving restricted accounts. A name like that fund doesn't just happen on your radar. He stepped closer. You contacted them on your own, didn't you? I didn't answer. He didn't need me to. You absolute idiot, he hissed. Do you have any idea how reckless that is? How unprofessional? You could tank the firm's credibility. I steadied my breathing. It was an introductory conversation, informal. He threw his hands up. Informal. Well then, clearly the child knows best. He leaned in, voice tight. You don't reach out to billion-dollar clients. You don't do anything unless I tell you to. That's how this works. Something in me hardened. With respect, I said quietly. I wasn't representing the firm. I don't care what you think you were doing. He cut me off. You stay away from that fund, completely. I'll handle any real communication from now on. My stomach dropped. You can't just... Oh, watch me, he said, and let me make something perfectly clear. If you ever step outside your lane again, I'll bury your career so deep they'll use it to study geology. He straightened his cuffs like the conversation bored him. You're a high school graduate with a lucky job. Don't confuse yourself for anything more. Then he walked out. The humiliation hit first, the anger second. But under that, somewhere I didn't want to look, was fear, not fear of him. Fear of losing the one thing that made me feel like I mattered. The fund had emailed again that afternoon. We'd like to move forward. Can you prepare a short projection model for us? My hands froze over the keyboard. Callahan's words echoed in my head. Stay away, or I'll bury you. Maybe I should have listened. Maybe I should have backed off. Played safe. Stayed invisible. But then I thought about every joke at my expense. Every time he made other people laugh at me. Every time he pretended my work was his. Every time he made me feel like my future ended where my education did. And suddenly the fear didn't matter. I typed back, yes, I'll prepare the model tonight. I didn't know it, then how could I? But that reply would flip the entire hierarchy of our department upside down. Because the projection model wasn't just a document. It was the key that unlocked a deal worth more than our entire office handled in a decade. It was the moment I stopped being the kid Callahan tried to keep small. And it was the first step toward the one thing he never expected. I was about to become impossible to ignore. The week that followed felt like walking with a secret burning under my jacket. Every hour I spent at the office, I pretended to be the same quiet kid who stapled papers and fetched binders. But every night, I was on calls with people whose names appeared in business journals, discussing numbers so huge they felt unreal. The projection model took me 3 days. 3 days of working after midnight, of cross-checking data, of reading technical papers I barely understood until the 5th reread. But when I sent it, the fund responded in less than an hour. This is excellent work. Let's push forward. I stared at the message long enough for my vision to blur, not just because of the words, but because they meant I wasn't imagining it. Someone believed in my ability, not because of a title or a diploma or an office, but because of the work itself. But with every step forward, the pressure inside the firm tightened, especially from Callahan. He seemed to sense something, even if he didn't know what. He became sharper, more irritable, more controlling. He checked every document twice, hovered behind me at random times, barked questions at me in front of others, as if daring me to trip. Then one afternoon, everything detonated. I'd just returned from a private conference room, after a short call with the fund. It was supposed to be quick, confirming timelines, clarifying a term. But as I walked back to my desk, Callahan stepped out from behind a pillar, blocking my path. Where were you? He asked. I swallowed. Conference call. With who? An internal contact. He stared at me like he could peel the truth off my face. Don't lie to me, he said quietly. You're not smart enough for that. My jaw tightened. I brushed past him, but he followed. Stop right there. I kept walking. Evan! I turned. He looked unhinged, not loud, Not red-faced, not explosive. Worse, cold, focused. You think I don't know? He said. You think I don't see you sneaking into rooms like you're some kind of secret asset? Callahan, I'm handling my work. Your work? He barked. You don't have work that isn't assigned by me. He took a breath, smoothing his suit. You're done with whatever you think you're doing, whatever fantasy you've built. I'll be talking to HR this afternoon. My stomach flipped. For what? I asked. For overstepping, for unapproved communication, for misconduct. For whatever the hell I decide it is? I felt something in me crack, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet final break where fear used to live. It's not misconduct, I said. It's initiative. He stepped closer. No, he growled. It's insubordination. I was about to respond, carefully, calmly, when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Then his eyes widened. He didn't blink for a full second. Then another, and another. He looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, there was something behind his eyes that wasn't contempt. It was panic. He walked away without a word, headed straight for the executive offices. I didn't understand what had happened until 20 minutes later, when I got an email from the fund. We've informed your firm that our deal will proceed only under your direct handling. Congratulations. We look forward to finalizing terms. My heart nearly left my chest. They'd told the firm, directly, on paper. The entire office buzzed like electricity. People whispered in corners. Screens lit up. Doors shut. Something huge was happening, and everyone knew it, even if they didn't yet know I was in the center of it. Less than an hour later, I was called upstairs. The partners' boardroom was a glass-walled box overlooking half the city. I'd never been inside it. My hands shook as I walked. Inside sat 3 senior partners and Callahan. He didn't look at me. Evan, one partner began, we've received an interesting communication. I opened my mouth, but he raised a hand. We'd like to hear your account first, from the beginning. My throat was dry. My palms were damp. But I told them. Everything. No embellishment. No dramatics. Just the truth. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one partner turned to Callahan. Did you know about this? Callahan straightened. I was overseeing the situation, he said smoothly. I directed him in. No, I cut in before I realized I was speaking. He didn't direct anything. Callahan's head snapped toward me. The fund reached out to me alone. That's enough, Callahan snapped. But one of the partners leaned forward. Actually, it's not enough, Mr. Callahan. The fund explicitly stated that all of their communications were with Evan. They made it extremely clear they selected him based on his personal conduct and professional diligence. He swallowed. In fact, the partner continued, they were quite clear that you were not to be involved at all. The temperature in the room dropped. This is a misinterpretation, Callahan said quickly. Evan is inexperienced. He likely exaggerated his role. I'll handle the communication moving forward. No, another partner said. You won't. The silence that followed was the kind that rearranges a room. We'll be conducting an internal review, the partner said. Effective immediately, you are removed from all client-facing responsibilities. Callahan's face drained of color. You can't be serious, he whispered. No, the partner said. We're being generous. Callahan turned toward me like all of this had been my doing, like I had betrayed him, like his downfall was something I orchestrated instead of something he'd built himself, brick by brick, insult by insult. This isn't over, he hissed under his breath as he left the room. The door clicked behind him, and then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong for someone else, and right for you. A senior partner turned to me. Evan, he said, you've done remarkable work. We'll need you to stay involved as the deal finalizes. This is one of the biggest accounts we've handled in years. I nodded, trying to stay composed. But inside everything felt loud. The relief, the vindication, the sudden dizzying shift in the air around me. I didn't know what would happen next, how big the deal would become, how far this would go, how deeply things would change. But one thing was certain. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. They didn't put me in a corner office overnight. Life doesn't flip like a light switch, no matter how good it would look in a movie. What actually happened was quieter, slower, and, honestly, better. First, they gave me a different badge. It's stupid, but that plastic card felt heavier when they reprinted it with a new title. I went from analyst support to client lead, strategic accounts. Same building, same elevators, same burnt coffee in the break room. But when I tapped that card at the glass doors to the executive floor for the first time, the reader blinked green. It had never done that for me before. Inside, there were fewer people and more silence. Meetings with the fund moved from late-night video conferences to scheduled calls and in-person sessions. Only now I wasn't hiding in side rooms. I was at the table. The first time I met their delegation in person, they flew in 3 representatives. They walked in with the kind of calm you only get when your signature can move markets. The oldest one, a man with silver hair and a soft voice, shook my hand and said, "So you're Evan, the one without the diploma." I froze. Then he smiled. "Good," he added. "We've seen enough diplomas. We wanted someone who listens." That line stayed with me long after they left. The work itself was brutal. Weeks blurred into each other. Due diligence, calls, models, stress tests, scenarios, language that sounded more like engineering than finance. Sometimes I'd walk home at midnight, brain fried, shoes aching, too tired to feel proud. But every time I thought I was in over my head, I remembered Callahan's voice, "You're just a high school graduate." And then I remembered the fund's voice, "This is excellent work." I chose which one to feed. While we moved towards signing, the internal review on Callahan quietly expanded. HR started calling in people from my floor just to ask a few questions. At first, folks were nervous. Then they realized they weren't the only ones with stories. Turns out I wasn't the first person he humiliated. I was just the youngest. There were assistants he'd mocked, analysts he'd frozen out of opportunities. One guy who'd left the firm entirely after being screamed at in front of a client. None of it had stuck before. No one had wanted to push back against a rainmaker, but now the rain was coming from somewhere else. One morning, about a month into the process, I walked in and his office door was open. Empty, blinds pulled up. No framed degrees, no leather chair, just a blank space and a strip of clean carpet where his desk had stood. Someone had already removed his nameplate from the hall. I didn't ask where he'd gone. I didn't need details. I didn't need to see him escorted out. Knowing he was no longer above me, in any sense, was enough. We signed the deal on a Tuesday. There was no champagne popping in slow motion, no standing ovation, just pens on paper, a firm handshake, and numbers that would never fully feel real to me. 7 billion. 9 zeros. Money that would move thousands of lives, projects, careers. I walked out of that boardroom with my folder in hand and my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. At my desk, a notification popped up. Mandatory meeting with the managing partners. Boss is boss, 4 p.m. I thought I was in trouble, which tells you everything about how my brain was wired after a year under Callahan. Instead, they offered me a new contract, higher base, performance bonus, a percentage tied to the account, training budget, mentorship program, a formal path outlined in clean lines and bullet points that didn't require a degree to prove I belonged. One partner looked at me over his glasses. "You did something most people here would have been too afraid to even attempt," he said. "You saw an opportunity and you treated it with respect. That matters." I signed. My hands didn't shake this time. The next week, they moved me to a different floor. Not the top, not the biggest office, but a space with a door and a window and enough room for a second chair. The nameplate outside didn't say junior or assistant or anything that made me feel like somebody's shadow. It just said my name. I should have been happy. And I was, mostly. But there was still one thing left hanging in the air, like a cord that hadn't resolved. He took care of that himself. It was a rainy Friday when I saw him again, months after his office went empty. I was leaving the building, umbrella in hand, when I heard my name behind me. Evan! I turned. He looked smaller without the armor. No perfect suit, no polished confidence. Just a man in a wrinkled jacket, tie crooked, eyes tired. The kind of tired that goes deeper than a bad night's sleep. Can we talk? He asked. I could have kept walking. I thought about it. But some part of me wanted to hear what he'd say now that he didn't have a team behind him. We stepped under the overhang by the side entrance. People passed by, rushing through the rain, not really looking at us. I heard you closed it, he said. The deal. Yes. $7 billion? He asked, like he needed to confirm it wasn't a rumor. Yes, he exhaled, a quick, bitter laugh. You realize if you just looped me in, we could have... He trailed off. Never mind. There it was. The old reflex reaching for control even now. He looked at me more closely. I misjudged you, he said finally. I'll admit that. You did well. Better than I expected. It was the closest thing to an apology he could probably manage. I didn't do it to prove you wrong, I said. I did it because it was right for the client and for the firm. He nodded slowly. I know we didn't exactly get along, he said. But if anyone asks about me, a reference or... No, I said. He blinked. What? I'm not giving you a reference, I said calmly. I'm not lying for you, and I'm not putting my name behind how you treated people. His jaw tightened. Come on, Evan, he said quietly. You're better off now. You got your win. No need to punish me. I shook my head. This isn't punishment, I said. This is just clarity. He looked confused, almost offended. You always made it about my education, I went on. About the diploma I didn't have. About the rooms you thought I didn't deserve to be in. But that wasn't the real issue. Then what was? He demanded. Respect, I said. You never learned how to show it to people you thought were beneath you. That's why you're out there and I'm in there. I nodded back at the building. You taught me something, I added. Not what you intended, but something important. He waited. You taught me I'd rather be the guy without a degree who treats people well than the guy with a wall of diplomas who doesn't. His face tightened like I'd slapped him. You're still just a high school graduate, he said sharply, one last swing. And you're still unemployed, I answered. We both live with our choices. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain hit the pavement in steady sheets. Cars hissed by. Office lights glowed behind the glass. Good luck, Callahan, I said finally. Really, I mean that. I just won't be part of your story anymore. I turned and walked back toward the revolving doors. He didn't follow. Inside the lobby, the security guard nodded at me like he always did. I tapped my badge, watched the light flash green, and rode the elevator up to my floor. My floor. In my office, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and checked my inbox. There was an email from the fund. Appreciate your professionalism throughout the process. Looking forward to building this partnership with you over the coming years. The with you sat there, simple and solid. I leaned back in my chair. The room was quiet. No raised voices, no sarcastic laughter. No one hovering over me, waiting for me to mess up. Just the hum of the air system and the muted city outside. I thought about where I'd started. The kid everyone assumed was temporary. The one who got coffee and picked up copies. Who laughed along when the joke was on him. I thought about every night I spent studying material. People usually pay thousands a semester to have explained to them. About every small moment of doubt. Every time I almost believed I was exactly what he said I was. Then I looked at the signed contract for a $7 billion account, with my name on the contact line. A piece of paper doesn't define your worth, but sometimes it reflects it back at you when you've forgotten. I'm still a high school graduate. I'll always be that. What changed wasn't the line on my resume. It was the line I drew in my life. I won't let anyone turn my effort into their punchline. I won't stay small to make someone else feel bigger. I won't carry all the weight and let someone else take all the credit. And I won't apologize for being the kid who walked into a place he didn't belong and did the work anyway. These days, when I lock my office door at the end of the night, I hang my jacket on the back of my own chair. I make my coffee the way I like it. I answer calls from people who speak to me like a partner, not an audience. Sometimes, on my way out, I catch my reflection in the glass. I don't see just a high school graduate. I see the man who closed a $7 billion account in spite of the person who tried to convince him he never would. And that's enough.